Excellennial here with another story-based Excel tutorial, and today I'm talking with you about Rachel the jewelry maker. Rachel has sold a lot of jewelry in the last year, and now she wants to make an ad for her Etsy shop. She's having a hard time figuring out what product photo to feature. Rachel wants to find out what items she sold the most last year. This way she can use a photo of her most popular product in her advertisement. Here is Rachel's transaction sheet from the last year. With this information, she's going to try and find out what she sold the most of and then feature that in her next ad. Now this is a lot of data with 625 rows. Now we have to see if we can simplify this to find what was sold most often. Our focus is going to be on the jewelry type and design type. Here's one example that I wrote out using join text and COUNTIF, where we joined the jewelry type and design type to make the jewelry and design type. And then we used the COUNTIF function, which counted the number of times that a certain phrase occurred. So in this formula here, J2, we have COUNTIF column G says earrings dash 2 hearts with blue/purple. So in this formula, it says that there are 23 occurrences of this exact phrase in column G. That means that this was sold 23 times according to this list of transactions. I'm going to show you how to do that, and then after that, I'm going to show you a simplified way to find this data without using COUNTIF. The only problem with this is that you can't click and drag it down or copy the formula into different cells, because you have to program each and every cell to say, look for this exact phrase in column G. So that's not the most effective, but it's a good way to show you how to use join text and COUNTIF. We will still need to use join text for the pivot option too. Let's start with going to the original tab, and I'll show you how I did that join text. TEXTJOIN is a function that allows you to take 2 or more cells and add them all together. TEXTJOIN, we're going to start with the delimiter. What do we want in between the 2 statements or cells or bits of information that we're trying to put together? I'd like to have a dash between the jewelry type and the design type, just so they can clearly be separated, even if the information is all in one cell. So to do that, I'm going to put it in quotations, the dash mark, and close out the quote. You have to put it in quotations because it's not a cell selection or a formula. It's actually me adding a character into the formula. That's where we get the quotations in there. Now I'm going to add a comma to close that out. We're done adding the delimiter. Ignore empty. We'll add false. It is required to answer this section or to add details for this section. The only thing is that if you add true, it will ignore the empty cells. Since I don't have any empty cells here, this won't matter to the formula that I'm making, but typically that is something to consider if you know you're going to have some empty cells that it should ignore or that you specifically want kept in the formula. So I'm going to add false there and close it out with a comma. Now the first text that we're going to add is going to be the text from cell E2. Now I'll add a comma, and the next text section is going to be from F2. And when I press enter, it's just going to string these all along together perfectly. Since I programmed it to look for the one cell in this row and then the cell next to it in this row, it's automatically programmed to update if I drag this down. Now you can see here, this one says that it's adding cell E3 and F3 together, and E4 and F4, so it updates going down the line because I clicked the little square, the little green square, and dragged it down. But the moment that we delete column G, all of these items, when we double click that little green square, will all fill in to the last thing in column F. So that's how I used TEXTJOIN to create this list here before I started to use the COUNTIF function. Now here I'm going to use equal COUNTIF, and we're going to count the occurrences of something in column G, press comma, and we're going to use the first example, quote, earrings dash 2 with blue/purple, quote. This is definitely a case where even if this has a reference point, when we double click this down, it's not going to update the text that's in this section here. So this isn't something that would be quick. If we want the data for every single one of these design and jewelry types, we have to, just like I did here in this example, type in every single individual label here This would be fine if we only had a list of maybe 3 items that we wanted to count how many times those 3 items occurred in one column. In this case, we have way more than that, so it would take a whole lot of time going through all 23 of these rows to add that custom formula in using the COUNTIF function. The alternative to this is using the TEXTJOIN and then making a pivot instead of adding all of these together on the COUNTIF items. Now to do that, we'll select cell A1, insert tab, and click pivot table. Now it should automatically select the pivot table here. You should see the dashes or the glowing lines around here. And normally we would create a new worksheet, but I'm going to go to existing worksheet and add it to the pivot table that we already have so you can see my reference point. Now we're first going to add jewelry and design type to the rows. And then we're going to add the transaction number to values. And we're going to use this little eye icon and change it to count. So it counts how many occurrences of each of these design and jewelry types there were. Now we're done adding the pivot fields. We're just going to sort the count of transaction number. We're going to sort that from largest to smallest. It'll be under your data tab and Z to A. Now by using the pivot table and TEXTJOIN, we were able to go through and find out that the ring with the triple hearts and red and white colors and the earrings with the 2 hearts and blue and purple colors were the items that sold the most in the last year based on the transactions. I wanted to show all of these options because I use the TEXTJOIN for both of these, but the COUNTIF is a really good option if you have a shorter list, and then the pivot table is a really good option when you have a whole lot of data that you need to go through. Now that Rachel's gone through this process, she can see that she can use COUNTIF for shorter lists with specific details, and then the pivot table when she has a whole list of transactions. Here, she was looking for what she had sold most often in the last year, so the pivot table was a much faster way to find this information for her. Now she knows that she sold 2 items most often last year, and can in turn use 2 photos that actually show off both of these items. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below, and until next time, have fun excelling!